Soldier feeds a puppy in 1943. When historians zoom in, they are amazed. At the National World War II Archives in College Park, Maryland. Military historian Dr. Sarah Chen meticulously examines a collection of photographs donated by the family of the late veteran Sergeant Michael Thompson. Among images from the 1943 Italian campaign, one seemingly simple photograph catches her attention. A young American soldier kneeling in what appears to be a bombed village, tenderly feeding a small puppy with a can of military rations. The image, taken in November 1943 according to the annotations on the back, shows the soldier smiling as the puppy eats from his hands, with destroyed buildings visible in the background. It is a moving scene that captures a moment of humanity amid the horror of war. The kind of image that became iconic for showing the compassion of American troops toward European civilians. But when Chen enlarges the image using high-resolution technology for the archives digitization project, she notices something that makes her pause and look more carefully. In the lower right corner of the photograph, partially visible behind the rubble of what had been a house, there is something that does not fit the apparent narrative. She uses a digital magnifying glass, adjusting contrast and clarity. What she sees leaves her completely surprised. It is not a puppy the soldier is feeding. Detailed analysis reveals characteristics entirely different from those of a dog. The body proportions, the shape of the limbs, and especially the facial structure visible in the animal's profile. Chen feels her heart race as she checks her observations again and again. After 4 decades studying war photographs, she is certain of what she is seeing. But the implication is so extraordinary that she needs confirmation from other experts. Chen contacts Dr. Robert Martinez, a zoologist specializing in primatology at the Smithsonian Institution, and Dr. James Anderson, an expert in forensic analysis of historical photographs. During a 3-hour video conference, the 3 specialists examine every detail of the enlarged image. Dr. Martinez, with over 20 years of experience studying primates, is categorical, without a doubt. The animal the soldier is feeding is a young chimpanzee, probably 6 to 8 months old. The body proportions, limb length, hand structure, and distinctive skull shape are unmistakable characteristics of a juvenile. Pan-T-R-O-G-L-O-D-Y-T-E-S. Dr. Anderson confirms the photograph's authenticity. The paper, chemicals, and photographic technique all correspond exactly to 1943, with no signs of manipulation or later alteration. The image is completely genuine, which creates a puzzling historical mystery. What was a baby chimpanzee doing in an Italian war zone in 1943? Chimpanzees are not native to Europe, and transporting exotic animals during the war would have been nearly impossible. Chen studies the soldier more closely. His uniform matches standard equipment of the 5th American Army during the Italian campaign. His unit patch, though blurry, appears to belong to an infantry division. He looks between 20 and 25 years old, and his expression shows genuine tenderness toward the animal. Nothing in his posture suggests the situation is unusual. The 3 specialists reach the same disturbing conclusion. The photograph truly shows an American soldier feeding a baby chimpanzee in Italy in 1943. Yet none can explain how this was possible. Dr. Martinez suggests investigating whether a zoo, circus, or research facility nearby could account for the animal's presence. Chen searches American, British, and Italian military archives for references to exotic animals during the 1943 Italian campaign. Records from the 5th Army show that in November 1943, American troops were advancing north from Naples, liberating towns along the peninsula. The photograph was taken near Cassino, an area that had seen intense fighting and bombing. She finds references to the liberation of a small town called San Pietro, where troops discovered an unusual facility abandoned by retreating German forces. Military reports describe an experimental site containing scientific equipment and several animals in deplorable conditions. A report classified for decades specifically mentions laboratory primates suffering from severe malnutrition. Found in improvised cages. Dr. Franz Kellner, an Austrian scientist working for the Nazi regime, had established a temporary laboratory in San Pietro to continue experiments begun in Germany. Documents revealed that Kellner was researching the effects of extreme stress and deprivation on primates, possibly as part of studies related to human resistance under wartime conditions, when German forces retreated precipitously. They abandoned the laboratory and the animals. American soldiers who liberated San Pietro found several young chimpanzees in terrible condition. According to a report by Captain William Hayes, the unit's medical officer, the men showed extraordinary compassion toward the creatures, providing them with food and basic care until they could be transferred to appropriate facilities. The report states, "It is remarkable to observe how these young soldiers, hardened by months of combat, show such tenderness toward animals that have clearly suffered." The photograph captured one of these spontaneous moments of compassion. Declassified archives revealed disturbing details about the facility American troops had liberated in San Pietro. Dr. Franz Kellner had been a respected scientist in Austria before the war, specializing in animal behavior and comparative psychology. After the Nazi annexation of Austria in 1938, Kellner was recruited into secret Reich research programs. His early experiments in Berlin focused on stress resistance and interrogation methods, using primates as test subjects because of their neurological similarity to humans. In 1943, as Allied bombing intensified in Germany, many research facilities were relocated to safer areas in occupied territories. Kellner was sent to Italy with equipment and animals to continue his work in a more protected environment. The laboratory in San Pietro was set up in an abandoned villa on the outskirts of town, formerly a summer residence of an Italian aristocratic family. The Germans converted the basement into an improvised laboratory, installing cages, monitoring equipment, and basic facilities to house experimental animals. Documents indicate that Kellner brought 5 young chimpanzees from Germany, all born in captivity at German research facilities. The experiments involved food deprivation, exposure to intense noise simulating bombardment, and forced separation from social groups to study stress responses. American medical reports describe the animal's condition when discovered: severely malnourished, showing signs of psychological trauma, yet surprisingly receptive to gentle human contact. Dr. Hayes noted, "It is as if these animals were desperate for affection after months of cruel treatment." The soldiers responded instinctively with compassion, sharing their rations and providing the physical contact the animals clearly craved. Records from the Fifth Army reveal that the soldiers' response to the rescued chimpanzees was highly emotional and spontaneous. Sergeant Michael Thompson, identified as the soldier in the photograph, served as a squad leader in the 36th Texas Infantry Division. His unit was among the first to enter San Pietro after the German retreat. In letters to his family in Houston, Thompson described the discovery. "We found something terrible here. Mama, there were little monkeys in cages, treated very badly by the Germans. They were so skinny and scared, it broke your heart. The boys and I have been taking care of them, giving them our rations. We can't do much more, but at least we can show them that not all humans are cruel." Documents show that several soldiers informally adopted the chimpanzees during the 2 weeks they remained in San Pietro. They improvised shelters, shared food, and provided constant companionship to the traumatized animals. Corporal James Mitchell wrote in his diary, "It's strange how caring for these little creatures helps us remember our own humanity after everything we've seen in this war." Medical officers noted that caring for the animals had positive psychological effects on soldiers struggling with combat fatigue and trauma. Dr. Hayes observed, The men most affected by combat show the greatest tenderness toward these animals. It's as if they are channeling all their repressed compassion toward these innocent creatures. The photograph captured this moment of mutual healing soldiers, traumatized by war, finding purpose and humanity by caring for animals that had endured similar suffering. The small chimpanzee Thompson was feeding had been nicknamed Liberty by the soldiers, symbolizing both its release from the Nazi laboratory and the freedom American troops were fighting to defend. Archives reveal the final fate of the 5 rescued chimpanzees, a story combining tragedy, hope, and the lasting impact of human compassion during wartime. After 2 weeks in San Pietro, military authorities decided the animals required specialized veterinary care that could not be provided in an active combat zone. The chimpanzees were transferred to a military veterinary hospital in Naples, where Army veterinarians evaluated their physical and psychological condition. Captain Dr. Robert Wilson, the chief veterinarian, reported, "These animals show significant signs of malnutrition and trauma, but their response to gentle human care is remarkable. Physical recovery is possible, though the psychological damage may be permanent." 3 of the chimpanzees, including Liberty, were eventually transferred to the London Zoo, which had offered to provide long-term care. Zoo records show they arrived in January 1944, accompanied by a letter from Sergeant Thompson that read, "Please take good care of Liberty. He taught us that even in the most terrible war, kindness still matters." The remaining 2 chimpanzees were sent to a research facility in the United States, where they were used in trauma and recovery studies ironically similar to their original experience, but conducted under humane and ethical conditions. London Zoo records indicate that the 3 chimpanzees slowly adapted to their new environment, though they displayed unusual behaviors that suggested lasting trauma. Liberty developed a particular interest in visitors wearing military uniforms, often approaching the barrier when he saw soldiers. The head caretaker, Albert Morrison, noted, "It's as if he remembers the kindness he received from American soldiers." Liberty lived at the London Zoo until 1961 and became one of its most beloved residents, known for his gentle nature and apparent sensitivity to human emotion. When he died at the age of 18, the zoo installed a small plaque that read, "Liberty, rescued by American soldiers in Italy, 1943, a symbol of compassion in dark times." Research shows that the encounter with the rescued chimpanzees had a deep and lasting effect on the soldiers involved, influencing their lives long after the war. Military medical records indicate that members of Sergeant Thompson's unit reported significantly lower levels of post-traumatic stress than other units that experienced similar combat. Dr. Hayes theorized that caring for vulnerable creatures gave the soldiers a way to process their own trauma through meaningful and constructive action. After the war, Thompson returned to Houston and founded a charity dedicated to rescuing abandoned animals. In interviews decades later, he said, "Those little monkeys taught me that no matter how bad the world gets, we can always choose kindness. That lesson saved my life more than any military training." Corporal Mitchell became a veterinarian after the war, specializing in the care of traumatized animals. He often cited his experience in San Pietro as the defining moment of his career, saying that witnessing how the animals responded to love after severe abuse showed him the true power of healing. Other members of the unit pursued careers in animal care, education, or social work, all describing their time with the chimpanzees as a transformative experience. Records show that veterans of the unit stayed in contact for decades, meeting every Veterans Day to remember not only fallen comrades, but also Liberty and his brothers. In 1963, on the 20th anniversary of San Pietro's liberation, they visited the London Zoo together to see Liberty, now fully grown. Morrison later reported that Liberty appeared to recognize Thompson, approaching the glass and extending his hand as he had as a baby. Thompson wept and told Morrison, "He saved me as much as I saved him." Declassified documents reveal a deeper and more disturbing scientific context. Dr. Franz Kellner had conducted his experiments as part of a secret Nazi program aimed at developing interrogation and psychological control techniques. OSS archives show that after the war, Allied intelligence discovered the San Pietro laboratory was part of a wider network researching methods to break human psychological resistance. The experiments on chimpanzees were designed to determine stress tolerance limits, effective deprivation methods, and ways to create psychological dependence in captives. Kellner had been developing what would later be known as brainwashing techniques decades before the term existed. Records indicate that after the German retreat, he escaped to Switzerland with his research data. Allied intelligence searched for him as a war criminal, but he was never captured. In 1947, reports suggested he was working for the intelligence services of a foreign power, possibly applying techniques developed on animals to human interrogations. Documents also show that Kellner's data was later studied by American and British military psychologists seeking to develop countermeasures to protect their own personnel. This research indirectly contributed to resistance training programs for pilots and intelligence officers at risk of capture. Dr. Chen observes, "The irony is devastating. The same animals tortured to develop methods for breaking human will ultimately taught American soldiers the value of compassion and humanity." Documents suggest that the instinctive compassion shown by Thompson and his unit was the very opposite of what Kellner had attempted to eliminate the innate human capacity for empathy and care for the vulnerable. Further research reveals that the story of the rescued chimpanzees had implications far beyond the moment captured in the photograph. London Zoo records show that Liberty and his companions became early subjects in the study of animal trauma and recovery, contributing to the development of modern methods for rehabilitating abused animals. Dr. Margaret Foster, a British primatologist who worked extensively with the rescued chimpanzees, published research that helped establish the modern understanding of psychological trauma in primates. Her observations of how Liberty and the others responded to different forms of human interaction influenced animalistic therapy techniques later applied in veterans hospitals. Documents indicate that Thompson maintained correspondence with Dr. Foster for many years, providing first-hand details about the chimpanzees' behavior during their rescue, information that proved crucial to understanding their recovery. In 1955, Foster visited Thompson in Houston and observed how his experience with the chimpanzees shaped his work with rescued animals. She wrote, "Sergeant Thompson possesses an intuitive understanding of animal trauma that surpasses many years of formal training. His experience in San Pietro taught him to recognize stress and response signals most people would never notice." Records also show that other soldiers involved in the rescue contributed to advances in related fields. Mitchell, who became a veterinarian, developed treatment protocols for animals affected by war, including military dogs and horses. His work was directly influenced by techniques he had first encountered while caring for the chimpanzees in San Pietro. Veterans Affairs documents reveal that the soldiers who rescued the chimpanzees experienced significantly lower rates of alcoholism, depression, and other common post-war struggles. Military psychologists theorized that caring for vulnerable beings gave them a healthy means of processing their own trauma. The photograph of Sergeant Thompson feeding the chimpanzee Liberty became a powerful symbol that transcended its historical moment, representing humanity's ability to preserve compassion even in the most brutal circumstances. Chen published her findings in a book titled Compassion in Combat: The Hidden Story of San Pietro, which explores not only the rescue of the chimpanzees, but also the broader connections between trauma, recovery, and the healing power of care. The photograph inspired new understanding of how soldiers process trauma and how small acts of kindness can produce lasting effects. Thompson's descendants donated the original image to the National World War II Museum, where it became the centerpiece of an exhibition on humanity in war, featuring Thompson's letters, London Zoo documents, and video testimonies from surviving veterans involved in the rescue. Liberty. The chimpanzee in the photograph was posthumously recognized as a symbol of resistance and recovery. The London Zoo established the Liberty Fund to support the rescue and rehabilitation of animals traumatized by armed conflict, continuing the legacy that began in a bombed villa in Italy. The story also inspired further research into the therapeutic role of animal care for veterans with PTSD, with several programs adopting techniques originally developed through the study of Liberty and his companions. Dr. Chen concludes, "This photograph reminds us that even in humanity's darkest moments, compassion remains a powerful form of resistance against dehumanization. Thompson and Liberty saved one another, showing that kindness can be both an act of defiance and a path to healing." What once appeared to be a simple image of a soldier feeding a pet ultimately revealed a profound story of trauma, recovery, and the enduring bond between humans and animals across species in moments of shared vulnerability.